You're watching Frank in Context. Did Trump actually say that he was going to be a dictator on day one? Mainstream media seemed to think so, and that's the narrative that they were pushing. So I want to take a look at this clip from mainstream media talking about the statement, and then I want to dive into the context and see if that mainstream media narrative actually holds up.
Donald Trump is no longer merely suggesting he'll be a dictator should he win a second term. Now, he's just coming right out, and he's saying it. Watch.
I want to go back to this one issue, though, because the media has been focused on this and attacking you. Under no circumstances, you are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except
Look,
what?
he's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border, and I want to drill.
That's not retribution.
I'm going to be, you know, he keeps, we love this guy. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one.
Other than day one, which is another way of saying, yep.
All right, so first of all, I don't honestly know how anyone could take her seriously because she just seems so unbelievably irritated while she's giving that broadcast. Like, she seems angry about it, like legitimately. But I don't mean to pick on her too much. My point is that mainstream media, not just her, not just that news outlet, at large, was trying to say that Trump seriously meant that he was going to be a dictator. But even after watching the exchange that they showed between Trump and Sean Hannity, I'm not buying it. I think that exchange was lighthearted. I think Trump was exaggerating. He was saying, I'm going to be like a dictator. That's how strong I'm going to be on pushing these agenda items through. Now, they cut the clip short there. I'm going to go ahead and play the rest of that clip in this next segment, but I just want you to keep in mind that they're trying to paint Trump as actually seriously saying that he's going to be a dictator, and I don't think that's what he meant at all.
We love this guy. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border, and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator.
So that sounds to me like you're going back to the policies when you were president. All right, take a break. Just getting started.
So that was the rest of the clip that they didn't want you to see. Donald Trump isn't seriously saying he's going to be a dictator. He's going to say, I'm going to be a dictator on day one. And what I mean by that is I'm going to drill for oil and I'm going to secure the border. I'm going to put the border wall back in action. And it's like, that's what people voted for the first time. And even Sean Hannity says, well, that doesn't sound like retribution. That sounds more like you're going back to the policies that you had when you were in office the first time. And Trump says, that's exactly right. So is he saying he's going to be a dictator seriously? I don't think so. I'm not buying it. But here we have MSNBC again in this next clip, and let's see what they have to say about it.
Alone, Trump might be powerless to act on such threats. But Trump, he is not alone. You just heard people gleefully cheer for a day one dictatorship.
Is that really what people are cheering for? Or are they cheering for the policy? Are they cheering for energy independence and a secure border? Or are they actually cheering for a dictator on day one? Now, mainstream media wants you to think that Trump is seriously saying he's going to be a dictator here and that people are cheering for their dictator in charge. But really, I think what it is people are cheering for the policy. They're cheering for a better economy. They're cheering for energy independence. They're cheering for a secure border, issues that really matter to Trump's base, and not just Trump's base. It's like 50% of the country, if not more. And if we look at the popular vote in the last election, Trump versus Kamala Harris, it was nearly 50% of the popular vote that Trump won. So pretty amazing stuff here. And for them to come out and say that that's not the case or to overlook that, I think is beyond irresponsible. I think it's negligent. I think that for them to cut the clip right there and not show the rest of what he was saying to put it in context is beyond irresponsible. It's manipulation. So let's go and take a look at another clip from the same town hall with Sean Hannity, where he asks him the question the first time, and Trump, they say he deflects, but really what he's doing is he's pointing out the hypocrisy. So let's take a look at this next clip.
I see what the media is doing now. I will put a montage together. They want to call you a dictator. You use the words, I am your retribution. And now before that, you said if you've been wronged, and you used other words as well. But I want to be very, very clear on this. To be clear, do you in any way have any plans whatsoever, if reelected president, to abuse power, to break the law, to use the government to go after people?
You mean like they're using right now? So, in the history of our country, what's happened to us, again, has never happened before.
So at this point in the campaign, and probably long before that even, honestly, mainstream media is trying to paint Donald Trump as a dictator. And Sean Hannity is asking him that question. He's trying to clear the air. He's saying, are you going to abuse your power? Are you going to go after your political enemies? Are you going to be a dictator, essentially? And Trump says, the only thing he can say, he says, oh, you mean like the way they're doing to me? Because honestly, what options does he have? He's backed into a corner. He could either play the apologetics game and say, oh no, I would never abuse my power. I would never go after my political opponents. Or he could take the offensive and he can say, oh, you mean the way they're doing to me? He can spin it on its head and he can aim the accusations right back at his enemies. Now, which one of those approaches is going to get his crowd riled up? Which one of those approaches is going to get his base fired up? Obviously taking the offensive. Trump is the fake news guy. Trump is the guy, when he gets accused of something, he spins it right back around at the other party. And that's what his base loves. So with that in mind, I honestly think that the dictator on day one comment was strategically made, because Trump knows that the next day, mainstream media is going to take that clip of him saying dictator on day one out of context, and then he's going to get to say fake news, and his base is going to go wild. So honestly, I think he played this perfectly. He's backed into a corner. He has no other choice but to go on the offensive, and he does so, and he creates a viral clip out of it. That's exactly what he wants. So I don't think this was a slip up so much as a strategy. Now let's take a look at this next clip where he gets into the details of how the other side is abusing their power.
What is your reaction to that, considering all the charges all stem from a couple of years ago?
Yeah, and they could have done this 3 years ago, and it would have been long over, but they didn't want to bring him because they had no case.
So Trump is responding to the accusations that he's going to abuse his power if he's reelected to go after his political enemies. And he's saying, you know, they're doing that to me right now. They could have brought these charges against me 3 years ago, but instead they waited until I was doing well in the polls while running for reelection. Now that's just way too convenient, isn't it, right? If you're going to attack your political enemies with the legal system, if you're going to abuse the justice system of our country to go after your major political enemies, we're talking about a president, an ex-president of the United States, being indicted while he's running for re-election 3 years after the supposed offenses occurred, not to mention all the other crazy offenses that they brought up, like overvaluing Mar-a-Lago to get a bank loan. And, you know, like all these charges they're bringing against him to try to bog him down while he's running for re-election. He's saying this is an abuse of power. This is what going after your political enemies looks like. They're accusing me of potentially going to do this in the future, but they're currently doing it to me right now. And he knows that the American people can see this. So he's just pointing it out in broad daylight. And I really think that he's being strategic with this. He's giving them a soundbite that he can use against them when he says, I'm going to be a dictator on day one. He knows they're going to take that and they're going to run it all over the major news outlets. And then he knows he's going to get to come out the next day and say exactly what he says in this next clip.
This is just a political ploy. Trump is a dictator. He wants to be a dictator. You know, it's interesting. I did a show, Sean Hannity. Did you ever hear of him? He's a very nice man. And he said, essentially, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? Tell me. I think he was trying to give me a nicer question than maybe you guys would. He meant it very well. I said, I'm going to be a dictator for one day. We're going to do two things. The border, we're going to make it so tight you can't get in unless you come in legally. And the other is energy. We're going to drill, baby, drill. After that, I'm not going to be a dictator. After that, I'm not going to be a dictator. So
you weren't saying that if the
and the press picks it up. So I said, I'm going to be a dictator for one day. They cut it. They go, I'm going to be a dictator. But they cut the rest of the sentence.
I mean, just look at this guy. He's loving this. This is what he does. What puts most people on their heels, Trump leans into. You know, anyone in that position, anyone who's been called a dictator for years and years, and now he's under attack in this moment at this time. He's under attack. They're waging legal warfare on him, trying to tie him up while he's trying to run for office. And instead of going on the defensive and saying, you know what, I'm not going to be a dictator. I would never go after my political opponents. I would never break the law. He's saying, you know what, you're calling me a dictator? Yeah, I'm going to be a dictator on day one. And he knows that the news media is going to run that out of context and try to paint him as a dictator because they've been looking for any little tidbit they can find to paint him that way. And he knows it. And then the next day he comes out and he's like, yep, they took me out of context again. Fake news. And he loves it. And his crowd loves it. And the people on the fence see the hypocrisy. They see the news media taking him out of context and twisting his words. And it just drives more people into the Trump camp. And this is the cool thing about this guy. This is the thing. Because when you look at what happened, a lot of people would look at him saying that and be like, I can't believe he said that. That's terrible for his campaign. But in reality, it's one of the best things that he could do for his campaign is to say stuff like that. The best thing he can do. It's a viral clip. It gets all the attention on him. And, you know, it seems bad at first, so it draws everybody in. But then he's like, well, look at what I actually said. This is fake news. And you look at what they're saying in the news, and it's like he really meant he was a dictator. And then you look at the clip, and you're like, he was just exaggerating. So there's a huge disconnect, and people realize that. People realize that they're being lied to. People, at the least, they realize that things aren't the way that the mainstream media is saying they are, and that makes them doubt what they've been told. And then they start listening a little more to what this guy has to say, and they're like, you know what? Maybe I'm actually going to vote for this guy. And I think this is how he won the election. I think the things that they attacked him with actually pushed his campaign over the edge. And I think the liberal news media actually did Trump a lot more favors than, you know, disfavors. I don't know if disfavors is the way to say that, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, thanks for watching, and let me leave you with this. The next time you see a short clip that looks like it's taken out of context or cut a little too close, or maybe they talk over a certain part of it, stop watching whatever that is and go find the full video for yourself. It doesn't take that much time, and it's going to give you so much more insight into what you're watching than any news analyst is going to be able to give you. Even me. Go find these videos for yourself. Watch them. That's the way to do it.